It was one of those late autumn evenings where the horizon bled crimson, casting long shadows across the polished oak floors of Carter's Prime. The restaurant had stood for 3 generations in our family, a legacy carved into every brick and beam. As I stepped into the dining room that evening, my heart raced with anticipation. The air was thick with the mingling aromas of freshly baked bread and aged red wine, a scent that always made me feel like I belonged here. It wasn't just a place, it was home. And tonight, they called this important meeting to discuss its future. "Your father and I have decided on the next leader of Carter's Prime," my mother said finally, her voice low but steady. Her hands twisted together nervously over the tablecloth, as if she were trying to wring out some invisible guilt. I swallowed hard, my pulse pounding in my ears. This was the moment I'd been waiting for since I was 10 years old. Standing on a stool in the kitchen to reach the stove, every burnt scar on my fingers told a story of dedication, of love for what we did here. My entire life had been leading up to this. But then came the words that shattered everything. "We're handing Carter's Prime to Emma," my father announced abruptly, his tone flat, devoid of emotion. For a split second, I thought I'd misheard him. The clinking of silverware against china seemed to echo louder than ever before, each sound drilling into my skull. My vision blurred momentarily, and I felt rooted to the spot, frozen by disbelief. Was this really happening? All those sleepless nights spent perfecting recipes, all the sacrifices, were they meaningless now? Across the table, Emma leaned back in her chair, smirking like a predator who'd already claimed its prey. "Guess you'll be stuck washing dishes, little brother," she sneered, her lips curling into an insufferable grin. "Maybe someday you can work your way up if you're lucky." Her words struck me like a slap to the ears, sharp and stinging. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. How could they do this? After everything I'd done, after proving myself time and again, how could they choose her? "You don't understand," I shouted, slamming my palms onto the table so hard that the glasses rattled. "I've worked harder than anyone else. I know this place inside and out. I've poured my soul into it." My father's eyes narrowed, cold and unyielding. "Hard work doesn't mean squat without business acumen, boy. You're nothing more than a glorified cook. And if you can't accept that," my mother chimed in, her voice sharp enough to cut glass, "then there's no place for you here." The room spun around me. Their voices blended into a cacophony of betrayal, each syllable slicing deeper into my chest. I wanted to scream, to argue, to make them see reason, but what was the point? They'd already made up their minds. As I stumbled out of the dining room, the weight of their decision crushed down on me like a physical force. My legs carried me mechanically toward the grand staircase, but my mind was elsewhere, replaying their cruel verdict over and over again. I gripped the railing tightly, feeling the cool metal bite into my palm. My hands, those same hands that had crafted countless masterpieces in the kitchen, eliciting gasps of delight from patrons, now trembled uncontrollably. Above me, the chandelier cast flickering golden light across the walls, stretching my shadow long and distorted like a ghost hunting the halls of my own home. Each step I took felt heavier than the last, as though gravity itself conspired against me. The familiar sense of roasted garlic and seared steak wafted through the air, mocking me with memories of happier times. At the bottom of the stairs, I paused, staring out at the darkened street beyond the window panes. Outside, the city buzzed with life, oblivious to my pain. But inside, I was drowning in silence, suffocating under the weight of rejection. "Is this how it ends?" I whispered to myself, my voice barely audible even to my own ears. "After everything, is this truly where I belong?" With clenched fists and a heavy heart, I walked out into the night, leaving behind not only the house but also the dreams I'd nurtured for so long. The chill of the autumn breeze stung my cheeks, mirroring the Reich within me. Somewhere deep inside, though, a spark remained, a tiny ember refusing to be extinguished. They might have taken Carter's Prime away from me, but they couldn't take away who I was. The days that followed my expulsion from Carter's Prime were a blur of anger, shame, and restless nights. I tried to push thoughts of the restaurant out of my mind, but it was impossible. It wasn't just a building or a business, it had been my lifeblood for as long as I could remember. Still, every time I thought about Emma strutting around in my kitchen, giving orders she didn't understand, bile rose in my throat. But I refused to look back, or so I told myself. Meanwhile, Carter's Prime began its descent into chaos under Emma's leadership, or rather, mismanagement. She stormed into the restaurant one morning, her stiletto heels clicking sharply against the wooden floors like gunshots in an empty hall. Her voice carried through the dining room with an authority that felt forced, almost desperate. "All staff, follow me to the office," she barked, her tone dripping with arrogance. The employees exchanged uneasy glances but obeyed, shuffling behind her like prisoners being led to their fate. "She's cutting half the serving staff," Mary, the old manager, whispered to a colleague later that day, her eyes red and swollen from holding back tears, "and switching to cheaper suppliers. Do you know what this means?" The quality, it's going to drop. She was right. Within weeks, the once sprout Carter's Prime started showing signs of decay. The menu changed, new dishes dreamed up by Emma without consulting anyone who actually knew how to cook. Plates came out looking sloppy, tasting bland and reeking of mediocrity. Regular customers shook their heads in disappointment, leaving stingy tips or worse, walking out before finishing their meals. Then came the night of the big VIP event, a last-ditch effort by Emma to prove herself. The restaurant buzzed with activity, packed to capacity with guests dressed in their finest attire. Emma stood near the entrance, wearing a scarlet dress that screamed for attention. But despite her confident facade, beads of sweat trickled down her forehead. Something was off. "Where's John?" someone hissed in the kitchen. "He quit this morning," another replied. Panic rippled through the staff. Without the head chef, the entire operation teetered on the edge of collapse. As the evening wore on, disaster unfolded. Steaks emerged from the kitchen tougher than leather, sauces cloyingly sweet, and vegetables still cold from the fridge. A prominent food critic took one bite of his steak and grimaced. "This tastes like shoe leather soaked in syrup," he muttered loud enough for nearby tables to hear. In the corner, Sarah Black, a well-known food blogger, snapped photos of her barely touched plate. Hours later, her scathing review went viral online. Carter's Prime has fallen from culinary heaven straight into the abyss. Mediocre food, disorganized service, and an atmosphere devoid of charm. Emma lost control. Standing in the middle of the dining room, she screamed at the top of her lungs, "Why can't any of you do your damn jobs properly?" Her shrill voice echoed off the walls, silencing the chatter of horrified patrons. Some left immediately, while others stared awkwardly at their plates, unsure whether to eat or flee. Later that night, my phone buzzed incessantly on the bedside table. I ignored it at first, unwilling to face anything related to Carter's Prime. But when I finally picked up, Tom's frantic voice poured through the speaker. "Jake, please. The restaurant is falling apart. We need you." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to hang up and never look back. But curiosity, and maybe a sliver of guilt, got the better of me. I grabbed my jacket and headed over. When I arrived, the scene inside was pure pandemonium. Servers darted around aimlessly, dropping plates and colliding with each other. In the kitchen, flames licked dangerously close to the edges of pots, and raw ingredients sat abandoned on counters. Without hesitation, I rolled up my sleeves and stepped in. Adjusting the oven temperature, I instructed the overwhelmed cooks on timing and technique. 15 minutes later, the chaos began to subside. Orders flowed smoothly again and the staff regained their footing. But just as things seemed to stabilize, Emma burst into the kitchen. Her face contorted with rage when she saw me. "How dare you interfere?" she shrieked, storming toward me. Before I could react, her hand shot out, slapping me hard across the cheek. "I don't need your help," she spat, her chest heaving. My parents stood nearby, silent witnesses to the spectacle. They said nothing, not a word of defense, not even a glance of acknowledgement. Their silence spoke volumes. I laughed bitterly, shaking my head as I untied the apron from my waist. "You won't always have me to clean up your messes," I said, meeting Emma's glare with cold indifference. "Next time, you'll see what I'm truly capable of." With that, I walked out of Carter's Prime for what I believed would be the last time. As I stepped into the cool night air, I felt a strange sense of clarity. This wasn't the end, it was only the beginning. Walking away from Carter's Prime that night felt like shedding an old skin. It was painful, raw, but necessary. I stepped into the city streets under dim yellow streetlights, my heart heavy yet determined. For the first time in years, I had nothing, no money, no reputation. Just calloused hands and a burning passion for cooking. But deep down, I knew I couldn't let this break me. Failure wasn't final unless I allowed it to be. The days that followed were some of the hardest of my life. I wandered through the city, knocking on the doors of small restaurants, hoping for a chance. Most turned me away without hesitation. "We don't need someone who got fired from Carter's Prime," one manager sneered. His eyes filled with disdain as if my failure was contagious. Each rejection stung, but I gritted my teeth and kept moving forward. Every no fueled my resolve to prove them wrong. Then, by sheer luck or perhaps fate, I stumbled upon a tiny steakhouse tucked away in a quiet alley. Its sign was weathered, its windows dusty, but there was something about it that caught my eye. Inside, an old man stood behind the counter, wiping his hands on a stained apron. This was Mr. Allen, the owner. "I heard you used to work at Carter's Prime," he said gruffly, sizing me up with skeptical eyes. Without another word, he grabbed a slab of raw beef and slapped it onto the prep table. "You've got 10 minutes to impress me." My heart raced, but I didn't hesitate. Grabbing a knife, I began slicing the meat with precision, each movement deliberate and practiced. The rhythmic sound of blade meeting cutting board echoed through the kitchen. As the steak hit the hot pan, its sizzle filled the air, releasing a rich, savory aroma that made even me salivate. When I placed the finished dish before him, Mr. Allen studied it carefully before taking a bite. His expression shifted instantly from skepticism to awe. He paused, chewing slowly, savoring the flavors. This is damn good. You're hired. Working under Mr. Allen wasn't easy, but it was exactly what I needed. He taught me more than just cooking. He showed me how to run a business, market effectively, and build a brand. Under his guidance, I began experimenting with new ideas, blending traditional techniques with bold innovations. One evening, while staring at a piece of charred wood left over from the grill, inspiration struck. Why not combine the primal allure of open flame cooking with exotic spices sourced from around the world? The idea excited me, a fusion of past and present, tradition and daring creativity. Thus, Fire and Prime was born. Our grand opening was modest, barely noticeable amidst the bustling restaurant scene. But word spread quickly. A local food blogger visited during our second week. She took one bite of our signature dish, a perfectly seared ribeye infused with smoked paprika and hints of lemongrass, and her eyes lit up. Fire and Prime offers an experience unlike any other, she wrote in her glowing review. The steak melts in your mouth, bursting with layers of flavor so complex they feel like a symphony. This is the future of fine dining. Her article went viral overnight. Suddenly, people were lining up outside our door, eager to taste what everyone was raving about. The once quiet alley buzzed with energy, the hum of conversation mixing with the comforting clatter of plates and cutlery. Inside, the atmosphere was warm and inviting. Golden light bathed the rustic wooden tables, casting soft shadows on the exposed brick walls. The scent of grilled meats mingled with fresh herbs, creating an irresistible allure. Servers moved efficiently between tables, their smiles genuine as they delivered dishes crafted with care. Standing near the kitchen pass, watching plates leave the line and hearing the delighted murmurs of satisfied customers, I felt alive again. This was more than redemption, it was rebirth. Late one night after closing up shop, I stepped outside and leaned against the doorway of Fire and Prime. The queue had finally dispersed, leaving only the faint echo of laughter and footsteps fading into the distance. Looking at the line of people who had waited hours just to eat here, I felt a surge of pride swelling in my chest. For so long, I carried the weight of Carter's Prime on my shoulders, letting it define me. But now, standing here, I realized I created something entirely my own. Something built not out of obligation or legacy, but out of resilience and vision. I glanced back at the sign above the entrance, Fire and Prime, illuminated softly by string lights. It wasn't just a name, it was a declaration. They thought I was washed up, I muttered to myself, smiling faintly. But look at me now. As I locked the door behind me and walked home under the starlit sky, I knew this was only the beginning. Someday, when the time was right, I'd show them all what I was truly capable of. While Fire and Prime flourished, Carter's Prime spiraled further into ruin. Emma, desperate and humiliated, clung to whatever scraps of control she had left. I saw her face plastered across the newspaper's photos capturing her forced smiles at empty tables, or awkwardly posing with disgruntled patrons. But it was the image of me on the front page that seemed to drive her over the edge. One evening, as I scrolled through my phone in the quiet solitude of my apartment, a notification popped up. Carter's Prime challenges Fire and Prime to epic culinary duel. My heart sank. The next day, during an interview for a local magazine, Emma made her intentions clear. Her voice trembled with rage but carried an undertone of desperation. "You think you're better than me?" she hissed, gripping her wine glass so tightly I thought it might shatter. "Fine. Let's settle this once and for all. We'll host our VIP events on the same night. Whoever draws the bigger crowd wins. Simple as that." Her challenge spread like wildfire. Social media buzzed with anticipation, pitting us against each other in what people were calling the battle of the century. While I didn't relish the idea of competing directly with Emma, I couldn't deny the stakes. This wasn't just about pride, it was about proving that hard work, dedication, and passion could triumph over arrogance and entitlement. The night of the showdown arrived and the city brimmed with excitement. Both restaurants glowed under the soft light of chandeliers, though the atmospheres inside couldn't have been more different. At Carter's Prime, tension crackled in the air like static electricity. Waitstaff darted around frantically, bumping into chairs and dropping silverware. Emma stood near the entrance, her crimson dress shimmering under the lights. The beads of sweat trickled down her temples despite the cool evening breeze. She barked orders at anyone within earshot, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Hurry up! Why isn't this ready yet?" she screamed, her composure unraveling before everyone's eyes. Meanwhile, at Fire and Prime, calm reigned supreme. I moved methodically between stations, ensuring every dish left the kitchen flawless. The scent of sizzling steaks mingled with the soothing strains of jazz music, playing softly in the background. Our guests relaxed in plush leather chairs, their laughter echoing warmly off the exposed brick walls. Then came the moment that sealed Carter's fate. In the chaos of Emma's kitchen, one of her servers stumbled, spilling a full glass of red wine directly onto the lap of a prominent socialite. The woman shrieked, jumping to her feet as cameras flashed wildly. Within minutes, photos of the incident flooded social media, accompanied by mocking captions like Carter's Prime, where disasters happen daily. On the other side of town, we welcomed an unexpected guest, Marcus Langley, the city's most respected food critic, originally scheduled to attend Carter's Prime. He changed his plans after hearing whispers of our rival's impending meltdown. As he savored our signature dish tender, flame-kissed filet mignon infused with hints of smoked paprika, he nodded approvingly. Later that night, his review hit the internet. Fire and Prime is not merely a restaurant. It is a masterpiece. Every bite tells a story of innovation, passion, and unparalleled skill. Here, culinary artistry reaches new heights. Back at Carter's Prime, disaster compounded. Orders went missing, dishes emerged cold, and tempers flared among both staff and customers. It was only a matter of time before Emma snapped completely. And snap she did. Marching straight into my kitchen at Fire and Prime, she pushed past bewildered servers and slammed a steaming plate of food onto the prep counter. Her face burned crimson, tears streaming down her cheeks as she screamed at me. "You stole everything from me," she screeched, her voice raw with fury. "This was supposed to be mine." I turned to face her, my expression calm despite the storm raging around us. "I didn't steal anything," I said evenly, meeting her gaze without flinching. "You destroyed Carter's Prime all on your own. All I did was take back what should have been mine from the start." Before she could respond, security intervened, gently but firmly escorting her out of the building. Silence fell over the kitchen, broken only by the rhythmic clinking of utensils against pans. As I watched her leave, I felt no satisfaction, only resolve. This wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. Hours later, long after the last guest had departed and the final dish had been cleaned, I stepped outside Fire and Prime. The alleyway lay empty now, save for the faint glow of string lights swaying gently in the breeze. Leaning against the doorway, I allowed myself a rare moment of reflection. Emma's downfall wasn't something I celebrated, it was a reminder of how fragile success could be when built on shaky foundations. Fire and Prime represented everything I believed in: resilience, creativity, and authenticity. And while the road ahead would undoubtedly hold challenges, I knew I'd faced worse and survived. Looking up at the stars twinkling above, I whispered to myself, "It's not over yet." Because deep down, I understood that true victory wasn't about defeating others, it was about surpassing yourself. Months after the disastrous VIP event, Carter's Prime officially declared bankruptcy. The once proud establishment that had stood for 3 generations was now a shadow of its former self. Its name faded from conversations, its legacy tarnished by Emma's mismanagement and arrogance. It was a bitter end for a place I had once called home, but it also marked the beginning of something new. One crisp morning, as I sipped my coffee in the quiet solitude of Fire and Prime's kitchen, the doorbell rang. Opening it, I froze. Standing before me were my parents, older, wearier, their faces etched with regret. My mother's hands trembled as she clutched her purse, while my father stared at the ground, unable to meet my eyes. "Jake?" my mother began, her voice quivering. We made a mistake. A terrible one." For a moment, I didn't respond. Memories flooded back: the betrayal, the humiliation, the countless nights spent wondering if I'd ever recover. But as I looked at them now, I realized they weren't the same people who had dismissed me so callously. They were broken, just as Carter's Prime was. "We need your help," my father finally said, his voice hoarse. "Can you save the restaurant?" I let out a slow breath, weighing their words. Could I forgive them? More importantly, could I step back into the world that had rejected me? "I'll buy it," I replied evenly. "But on one condition: it won't be Carter's Prime anymore. It will be Prime by Jake Carter." The renovation process was both cathartic and challenging. As I walked through the familiar halls of the old building, memories came rushing back: memories of late nights spent perfecting recipes, of laughter with friends, of dreams that felt so close yet so far away. But instead of clinging to the past, I chose to reimagine it. Every detail was carefully curated to reflect my vision. The walls were painted a warm amber, evoking the glow of an open flame. Exposed brick added texture and character, while string lights cast a soft, inviting glow across the dining room. At the center of the space hung a mural of phoenix rising from ashes, symbolizing rebirth and resilience. Beneath it, a plaque bore the inscription, "From the ashes, a new fire is born." On opening night, I stood at the entrance, watching as guests streamed in. The aroma of sizzling steaks filled the air, mingling with the gentle hum of conversation. Servers moved gracefully between tables, delivering dishes crafted with care and precision. The atmosphere was electric, alive with anticipation and excitement. My parents lingered near the bar, their expressions a mix of pride and sorrow. They approached me hesitantly, tears glistening in their eyes. "We're sorry, Jake," my mother whispered, her voice breaking. "We should have trusted you. We should have believed in you." I nodded, placing a hand on her shoulder. "It's not too late," I said softly. "This isn't about fixing the past. It's about building a future." As the evening drew to a close, I wandered through the empty dining room, taking in every detail. The golden light of the chandeliers bathed the space in warmth, casting long shadows across the polished wooden floors. On the wall, the family portrait still hung, a reminder of where we had come from, but beneath it lay a new chapter waiting to unfold. Standing at the head of the table, I traced my fingers along the edge of a freshly set plate. The scent of herbs and spices lingered in the air, a testament to the passion and dedication poured into every dish. This wasn't just a restaurant, it was a declaration. A statement that no matter how many times life knocks you down, you can always rise again if you have the courage to try. I turned to face the room, imagining the generations of diners who would walk through these doors in the years to come. Each bite they took would carry a piece of my story, a story of failure, redemption, and triumph. "They used to tell me I belonged in the dish pit," I murmured, a faint smile tugging at the corners of my lips. "Now look at me." In that moment, I felt a profound sense of peace. The journey hadn't been easy, it had been fraught with pain, doubt, and heartbreak. But standing here, surrounded by the fruits of my labor, I knew it had all been worth it. As I locked up for the night and stepped into the cool embrace of the autumn breeze, I glanced back at the sign above the door, Prime by Jack Carter. It wasn't just a name, it was a promise. A promise to never stop evolving, never stop creating, and never stop striving for greatness. And somewhere deep inside, I heard the echo of my own voice: "This is only the beginning."